This killer's story began towards the end of the Second World War. Trevor Joseph Hardy was born on the 11th of June 1945 in the working-class suburb of Newton Heath, North Manchester. It was the beginning of a troubled childhood for Trevor.
Hardy's father was quite strict. He had some quite rigid rules around morality and that kind of thing. And if you look at Hardy's behaviour, he starts misbehaving quite early on. He starts rebelling against those rules, against those boundaries.
It is in that background, poverty. He got a reputation. He was, although he was short, he was nevertheless afraid of no one and would fight anyone.
At the age of just 8, young Hardy first started getting into trouble at school. His teachers wrote damning reports to his mother about him bullying his fellow classmates. Even at home, Hardy was an unruly child. He often escaped the family house to roam the streets.
So he's bullying, he's intimidating other children, he's being violent towards others. So right from the outset, from a really early age, he is breaking the rules. So here was somebody who was pretty feral, to be honest.
This was a kid who from the earliest moments was showing signs of a complete lack of connection with other human beings and with a complete lack of connection with the concept of social right and social wrong.
Hardy's mother believed she had an explanation for her son's violence and aggression. In his early years, he suffered a life-changing blow to the head.
Just a sliver of bone was broken off from his skull and moved nearer to the brain itself. And she suggested, and other people have suggested over the years, that that could have had an impact on his violence and his violent temper.
His family certainly thought that when a sliver of bone from his skull had pressed on his brain, it altered his behaviour, it made him more aggressive. Certainly, damage to the brain can alter behaviour, often quite radically.
By his teens, wild child Trevor Hardy was racking up an extensive criminal record. At the age of 15, he was arrested for theft and burglary and convicted for a string of more than 20 offences. The judge who presided over his case ruled that despite his age, he should receive a 12-month jail term in a bid to protect the public.
He was the youngest person ever to be sent to prison. He was in Strangeways at 15. That is a kind of unruly, uncontrollable young man he was. Violent man, worrying really that he could get through the system and operate like he did.
Well, there's no question that Hardy, as a young man, terrorised his local neighbourhood by the weight of burglaries that were going on, and they all knew it was him. So when he went into jail, they could open their doors again because he was just a prolific burglar, and everybody knew who it was.
But Hardy, the teenage tearaway and housebreaker, would soon tread a more sinister path of crime.
One of the characteristics of many serial killers is they begin by petty crime, and it escalates. I think he was set on murder from an early age.
July 1975, 18-year-old Wanda Scala was making the short walk back to her house in Moston after finishing her evening shift as a barmaid in the local Lightbound hotel. Hardy sprung his surprise attack barely a mile from Wanda's home, but his method was different from his first victim.
This time it wasn't a knife. This time Hardy hit her, I suspect from behind, with a brick.
She'd been hit with a brick. It was awful. It was somebody who took pleasure in inflicting that kind of injury. Totally unnecessary, really. Hardy said that it was a robbery. But no, that was more than a robbery. It was an horrendous, brutal attack on a young female.
After strangling Wanda, Hardy subjected his victim to yet more gratuitous violence.
He began to mutilate her body. In particular, he bit off her right nipple before he dragged her onto a building site.
Biting is often another act of cruelty. It's not related to the death. I think it suggests a degree of rage. It's clearly orientated towards the sexual aspects of the body. And to actually bite someone's nipple off, the amount of force you have to put on your teeth is incredible. This is a huge amount of violence for violence sake.
Hardy had now joined the ranks of other sadistic killers throughout history, including Newton Heath, a 1940s murderer he'd read about in prison. He too had bitten off the nipples of his victims. Police were alerted early next morning to Wanda's body, half buried on the building site. They were baffled by the depraved nature of her injuries.
We knew that she had had her right nipple bitten off, which was most certainly an unusual form of injury for any kind of murder.
He hadn't just done that. He hadn't just hit her once with a brick and strangled her, because he'd also then proceeded to absolutely to destroy her face, to crush it, so that her jaw was dropping off, that she was utterly destroyed.
Police felt this was the work of a monster. Not only had she been sexually assaulted, the frenzied blows to Wanda's head had shattered her skull. Even experienced murder detectives were shocked by the brutal nature of her injuries.
Horrific head injuries wasn't on Wanda's scale. She was, her private parts had been kicked. She had horrendous injuries. I've seen photographs just beyond belief, really.
The community was shocked and horrified by Wanda's brutal death. Many young women were now living in fear. In the days that followed, the police ran appeals in the press for information to help catch the killer. Details of the crime scene were reported in newspapers. Wanda's handbag had been taken. Police revealed that one of her shoes was missing, believed stolen by her murderer. Hardy began to enjoy his newfound status as a killer and decided to get involved in the investigation in his own sick way.
Hardy actually takes one of Wanda Scala's shoes back to the crime scene. Now, he's having fun here. He's playing with the police. And you often find this with individuals who have psychopathic traits and behaviours. They like messing with people.
Now been identified as the man wanted in connection with the violent sex attack in the pub.
Well, now, Manchester Police have a much clearer idea of what's going on. Now, this puts Hardy firmly in the frame for the murder, and Hardy disappears. He takes off, realising that this is going to be the police's view.
With Hardy now on the run, police made desperate efforts to track him down, but he had vanished. Weeks later, though, there was a breakthrough in the hunt for Hardy. Detectives had a tip-off that his girlfriend, Sheila Farrow, was signing on for welfare benefits at a job centre near Hardy's home. By tracing his lover, police hoped she'd lead them to the killer.
Sheila Farrow signed on at the social at Failsworth. I think it was a Thursday. After we learned it was actually the following day she was signed on. So a rather rushed surveillance operation was put together. And we found and traced Sheila at the place.
Hoping to follow her to Hardy, police kept a close watch on Sheila and tracked her every move.
We then followed her. By hook or by crook, we followed to Stockport, and she went into a house on Wellington Road. And we surrounded it.
Believing they'd finally found his hiding place, it was now or never for Ian Kirkpatrick and his team of detectives. Trevor Hardy had brutally killed 3 young women, and he was wanted for the violent attack on another. Police had to make their move, and fast, before the beast of Manchester broke loose once again. With no time to lose, police entered the building. They had a surprising helping hand from the woman who'd been protecting him.
Sheila Farrow let us in, And when questioned, have you seen Trevor? She's saying, no, he's not here. But she was in fact pointing to the hole in the roof, basically, the loft. And she kept saying, no, he's not here, but pointing upwards at the loft. And we went up, and the loft was opened, and up there was Trevor.
As police blocked the attic, he had nowhere left to run. Trevor Hardy was finally, once again, within their grasp.
That is probably the highlight of my career, was we looked up the trap door and somebody shouted, come down, Trevor. And he said, I'll come down if you don't hit me. For somebody who was so violent towards females, beyond belief.
With Hardy safely back in jail, his lover seemed happy to tell all.
Hardy's story begins to unravel when Sheila Farrow, his girlfriend, tells the police that actually he wasn't in bed with her when Wanda was killed, nor could she give him an alibi for the night that Sharon Mossop was murdered, the girl that's just been killed. So effectively, Hardy, now, he's clearly looking at a very long period of imprisonment.
Trevor Hardy was charged for the murders of Wanda Scala and Sharon Mossop, though he denied any involvement. But in August 1976, whilst on remand in Strangeways prison, he dropped a bombshell. He confessed to the killings. Hardy also had another surprise up his sleeve. He admitted to murdering another girl 2 years earlier. 15-year-old Janet Leslie Stewart had been an unsolved missing person case that police had never been able to crack.